And many of you know Brad, some of you that don't. He's a seventh generation Hoosier. Yay. Grew up in a small town, married his high school sweetheart. Unlike a certain congresswoman whose name should not be mentioned, Brad never turned his back on those small town Hoosier values of hard work, honesty, and showing compassion for his neighbor. You didn't come here to hear me babble, so without further ado, Brad Meyer.
Thank you, George. And thank you all for being here. And I see some friendly faces that I've seen multiple times, and I see some brand new ones. And I'm really glad that both groups are here. It's really nice. This is the 20th town hall that this campaign has done. So I'm an electrical engineer. This is a mechanical problem. So we're just going to have to accept that. No. There we go. Okay. Anyway, so we've done a bunch of these, and we have 16 or 17 of these planned over the next 5 weeks, going to every county that we can. There's 18 counties in the district. And because there's a lot of, welcome. Since there's a lot of new people, I'll give a longer introduction to myself. So you got a little bit of background on me, and then we'll get into a question and answer. And when we get into the question and answers, I'd like everybody to have an opportunity to get their first question done before anybody gets a second question done. That way it's fair and everybody has a shot. And just try to keep in mind that the longer the question, the less questions we can get out. And I'm going to try to be brief, although it's not my nature. So as George said, I'm a seventh generation Hoosier. I was born and raised around Indianapolis, married my wife when we turned 18, went to Purdue together, worked our way through college, got out, started our family. And like a lot of you, we lived the American dream. And now I'm going to get all choked up. George, you got me going. We started with nothing. Everything we owned fit in the back of a car, and we didn't even own that car. Okay. But we worked hard, we invested in our future, and we took some risks because we knew that tomorrow was going to be better than today. And one of the reasons that I'm running for office is that there were reasons for that optimism. And when I was 18 years old, I felt 6'12" and I was ready to start my adventure and take on the world, right? And when I talk to young people today, they don't have a lot of that optimism. And they have challenges that we didn't have when we were their age. And it's gotten to the point now that when George was 30, the odds that he was doing better than his parents was about 75% or more, maybe 80%. When I was 30, the odds that I was doing better than my parents was about 65%. And the last time they did that survey, it was 45%, and they stopped doing the survey, right? My hope for my children isn't that they're going to have an easy life. And this is being recorded so that they're going to cringe to know that I don't want them to have an easy life. I want them to struggle and work for and understand what it is to earn the things. But I want them to have a fair shot at a decent life. And Congress is breaking down this basic idea, not just Congress, but they're breaking down the basic idea that we're all in this together. They're breaking down the basic idea that we all do better when we're all doing better, right? And they're pitting us against each other, and they're bringing back the idea that our neighbors are other. And that kind of poisonous thinking is part of our past, and it belongs in our past. It has no business in our future. And that's why I'm running. That's the most succinct I can be. What would you guys like to talk about? What's keeping you up at night? What's got you upset? What do you want me to work on when I get to Congress? We'll let him go first, and then we'll go you.
I am an education major at Indiana University Southeast.
Okay.
I was just interested, I guess, where you fall with like what's going on with the current education system, both I guess on a federal level, state level, and just district level. Because I had worked at Slate Run Elementary class, and apparently with some budget cuts, I have been let go from that position simply because they couldn't afford to keep me there. And that was, truthfully, I say this without an ounce of misunderstanding. It was devastating for me to leave that school because I was very excited to graduate from that school, from IU, and began working in the school, and that disrupted my path between them. So I just wanted to, just I guess advocate for education.
Absolutely. As I said, my wife and I worked our way through college together, so we didn't have a standard college experience. But my brother and I were the first generation in our family to graduate from college. And it's made a big difference in my life. And the reason I'm here today is because of the opportunities that were opened up to me by going to college. And so I went to Purdue, and I don't know if that's a plus or minus in this area. In some areas in the district, it's definitely a minus. But today, I don't think I would have gotten into Purdue. Okay. My brain didn't start to get organized until I was about 17, right? And my grades were okay. My SATs were pretty good. But when my kids were applying to school, you needed to have like an 18.0 to get in, right? And you needed to have all these college courses, and credits and ahead and all these things. And my daughter actually did get, I think, accepted to Purdue, and there was really no financial aid, right? And there's a whole bunch of things going on with college, and then we'll talk about K through 12 as well. And one of them is when I was going to school, about 50% of the cost, university costs, were paid by the state. Okay, and it's now about like 14%. Okay, so that's part of why college is more expensive, right? When I was going to college, they invested in my generation, like roads and bridges and water treatment plants. We were part of the infrastructure that we were going to need as a society to have a strong society. And now we're saying, this is on you. You want an education? That's your deal. And we're not going to invest in you. And then we're going to load you with the debt associated with that instead of investing in you as part of our community. That's part of the problem, right? And when, pardon me, and there's discussions about, well, they've cut the amount that you can borrow, and they've reclassified and declassified nurses as no longer a profession, okay? And all of these things are frustrating, but capping the amount you can borrow doesn't make college less expensive, right? It's the fact that college is expensive that we have to borrow so much, and that they're addressing a symptom instead of the problem. And the problem is that college is too expensive, and we're not investing as a community. On the K through 12 side, is it Micah Beckworth?
Beckworth.
Okay. Basically, he wants to defund and undercut public education in favor of private schools. That's the long-term goal, okay? And that's why I'm not a big fan of vouchers, right? We need to invest in our communities and our schools. And if you look at, they took my marker away from me because they knew I'd talk longer if I had it. So you get me the marker? Yeah. So anyway, those are my positions on education. I'm going to find a way to use this marker before the end of the night. As an engineer, I feel more comfortable with a marker in my hand than a microphone. Okay, next question. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I forgot you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay.
All right.
I'll keep-
Go ahead. Faith will do
No, no,
you.
no.
All right.
First, I'm just thankful you're running. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Really thankful you weren't running. A lot of things I've heard you say in previous meetings are really tough, but the biggest one is what you just said. I'm at, my husband and I are at the age that our kids are gonna be okay. My grandkids, I worry about my grandkids. Now you're gonna get me crying, buddy. You know, I mean, when you've got food insecurities that are just rising and all this stuff, where does that put us where we can't even feed people? How are you gonna have a society? I worry about education and costs. I worry about climate and what is gonna happen as far as insurances and stuff with all that. I worry about that, Social Security, medical. I worry about it. So.
You know, when I started this a year ago, and the way I got started was I was working for the Navy. I spent 25 years in manufacturing, in leadership roles in manufacturing here in Indiana. And then the last 9 years of my career, I was a subject matter expert working for the Navy on systems that protected ships from missile attack. Okay. And when I saw Project 2025 and what they were doing, I started looking and I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to step in. So I quit my job a year shy of early retirement to run for office. Okay. And when I first started, I'd go to people and I'd say, what are you worried about? What's keeping you up at night? And everybody always had an answer. I'm worried about this. I'm upset about this. I want this to change. I want this to stop. I want this to be different. The most common answer I've gotten for the last 6 months is everything. Everything is keeping me up at night, right? That it's just thing after thing after thing. It is not one thing. It is the overall direction of this country. And this election is about the direction of this country. It's about who we're going to be as a nation. And whether we're taking care of each other and we're building on community, or whether we are going to be pitted against each other and the strongest one wins. And where we're going now is a system in which there are no winners or losers. There's only people standing in line waiting for their turn to lose. That's the system we're moving toward. So, you had a question. You always have questions. I love it.
Okay, I just put it on my mind
Yeah.
that ethics in government.
Sing
you
it,
know, I
sister.
just came from.
Yeah.
And ethics in government is a real concern for me because we have people holding office who are, if not convicted felons, certainly accused, who credibly accused, who have a track record of embezzlement, who have been impeached by their own party, like in Texas. We've got people running for Congress who have been credibly accused of domestic violence, child abuse. We've got political parties nominating convicted felons to run for office.
Yep.
So, when you get elected, no, not say when, what are you gonna do about ethics in government and make sure that your peers operate at an ethical level? It's just so important to me.
Agreed, 100%. And it goes back to, are you in office or are you working for the government out of your own interest or out of an interest in community and service, right? And we have to have a Supreme Court that abides by ethics rules. And we have to have people in Congress and in the White House that are following the rules. You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I'd started a list, and there's a section in here. Let's see if it's actually in here. Oh, good for me. It's actually in here. Let's see if I can find it. Graft, right? Oops, I got to go one more page because. So I'd started a list of just facts and examples of graft, and it starts here, 3 on this page, all of this page, okay, all of this page, and a little bit of this page, right? And, you know, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And this is going back to the 80s, and I'm talking about the 1880s, right? I'm talking about, you know, the kind of, we're in power and we're going to steal as much money as we can while we're in office, okay? And we have to stop this. It is going to undermine our government. You know, and one of the biggest things, one of the first things that they did when they got in power was they fired all the auditors. They said, we don't need these people. It's like, you don't need them if you're planning on like stealing everything that's not nailed down. And that's exactly what they've done. Okay. Congress and our current Congresswoman has a responsibility to force this ethical behavior, and they're not doing their job. Okay. Almost said a bad word. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So where do you start with that? I mean, I totally agree with you on that, but it looks like the general population
They both
could
want.
care less.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't there a time when I worked at the City Hall?
Mhm.
We couldn't take any gifts that were more than like $5 or
Right.
something like that.
Mhm.
What happened to those kind of laws? I mean, where I thought the president could no way take a plane from another country. I thought they couldn't even have like a diamond necklace or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was fairly paltry they could have
Yes.
for a reason.
Well, so the president has the emollients clause, and then government workers have, you know, anti-bribery things that are in place, and among the workers, those have been fairly well enforced, but when you get to a certain point, they're not enforcing those anymore, right? And it's very clear that there's a pay for play, you know, that page after page after page, just stuff that's happened in the last year and a half. Okay, and you know, I want to be ambassador of the United Kingdom. Well, how do I do that? Well, I give a whole bunch of money to you know, either Trump or his PAC or whoever, and then suddenly I'm an ambassador, right? So we're not hiring people based on qualifications. And if you really want to talk about whether we're hiring people based on qualifications, here is the easiest thing to give an example. Excuse me. RFK in a public meeting said that there is a correlation between autism and circumcision. Okay. These are the quality of people that are running our health system, right? So we have to restore this, and the way you do it is you're going to have to send people to jail for breaking the law, right? And it can't be vindictive. It can't be you know, politically motivated. It has to be, this is the law, okay, and you're clearly abusing your office, okay. That's the way we're going to have to start. And the way they've gotten around it is they've gotten rid of of reviewers and auditors, and they've gotten rid, and they've undercut the Justice Department and refocused the Justice Department so that we're not even looking at it. It's a problem.
It can all be looked at once they're on.
Yes.
But are they really gone? Because you got all these people that are supporting this stuff. And I don't understand why. Do they not care what's gonna happen to their kids, their grandkids, the rest of the world? You know,
I think, so I'm going to take the other side for just a second, which may not sit well with everyone in the room, but I think that many of them do care. Okay. One of the things that people struggle with is when they look at facts and see it one way, they can't understand why anybody would see it differently and have that difference in perspective. And you know, I have friends that I've had most of my life. I've got a friend that I've had forever that danced at my wedding. Okay, I've had friends that were there for me when my life was really hard, and they're very conservative, and they see things very differently. But we do have common ground. We want our families to do well. We want our children to do well. We want our society to be just society. We want a better future for everyone. Okay, and we've got to get back to that common ground. We've got to find a way that we can communicate that although there may be differences, there's a lot of common ground for us to stand on. Okay, and there's a lot of things in common that we can do. And 50% of people in the United States, or the people that vote, typically vote Republican. 50% of us vote Democrat. I think all of us want a healthy, strong country. We have very different ideas of how to do that. And we're not going to agree on all of it, but I think there's enough common ground that we can get some things done. So, yes, sir. Jim Graham, by the way, wonderful person. Go ahead.
Thank you. Appreciate that endorsement. I have it recorded here. So Brad, last week, it was announced by the Treasury Department that the US deficit hit $40 trillion.
Debt, go ahead. Yes, sir.
A number almost incomprehensible to believe how much debt that is. What is that, like $50,000 a person for everything?
$114,000 per man, woman, and child.
So it's a lot.
It is.
Now, you asked, what do I want you to do if you're elected?
Mhm.
Right?
Yep.
What are you going to do about the deficit, both over the next couple of years and over your long career in Congress? You're gonna be another Lee Hamilton, I know. So,
Well, I appreciate that. My preference would be that I would be in office for 6 years, right? Not all in one sitting. I'd have to go through a couple of elections. So I'm going to use the marker board, not because I have to, but because I want to. Okay, $40 trillion. Okay, we've spent greater than $1 trillion per year just servicing that debt. Okay, it's more than the military budget. Okay, it is $114,000 per capita. Okay, this is a real problem. It has been demonstrated, and I spent some time, a couple times, and I looked, and Democrats blame the Republicans, and there's room to blame the Republicans, and Republicans blame the Democrats, and there's room to blame the Democrats. And the fact is, if you look at the numbers, neither one of us is doing a really spiffy job on this, right? My answer is that we actually are going to have a constitutional amendment. And what I've proposed on my website is that once it's enacted, if there isn't a valid, balanced budget by October 1, which is the beginning of the fiscal year, nobody in the House, Senate, or President can run for their next election. They have to so if I was in Congress, I'd have to sit out for 2 years after I failed to get a budget. Whether it was my fault, not my fault, we're having a political disagreement between Democrats and Republicans, and we can't figure it out, and we don't have a budget, you're all fired. You failed to do your job. You can reapply after you've set out for 1 term. And that will end all of these shenanigans. And there have been years that we didn't have a budget. We just had a continuing resolution. I was working on a system that was designed to protect ships from missile attack that was going through the development process. And you say, well, this year I need this much money in order to meet these milestones toward, final release on the ships. And then next year they say, well, we're not going to give you more money, even though you needed to ramp up for the next phase of this. The failure of Congress to do its job is a real problem. And they've demonstrated that they cannot do it on their own. They have to be forced to. And just cutting their pay until they get their job done is not going to be enough, because most of those people, unlike me, don't need their paycheck. They're not living off of that paycheck. Okay, but throwing their butt out of office for a term, that will fix it. That's the answer.
So you would introduce a constitutional amendment in your first month in Congress?
Probably not the first month, but certainly in the first year.
First year.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to do in the first year. Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on the immigration?
Immigration is another good example. We've been in the same mess to a greater or lesser degree for 40 years. And we've been stuck because we talk about things in rhetoric. The Democrats talk about immigration from a position of compassion, and the conservatives talk about it from a position of legality. And we've never been able to find common ground. And the common ground is that it's in our economic best interest to have legal, controlled immigration. Okay. If you look at, by the way, I know that these graphs are of no value, but it makes me more comfortable talking about problems. If you look at the labor participation rate since 90, it kind of looks like this. Well, all right, maybe more like this. And it's going to continue to go down. You know why? Because people are getting older and they're having less children, and the baby boomer generation is moving out. So the percentage of people working in the United States as a percentage of population is down. We do not have enough workers to meet all of our labor needs. I believe that, and this is the most conspiratorial thing you'll hear me say, I believe that Congress has known for years that we need additional labor, but they didn't want to admit that, so they adjust policies to allow the border to be porous enough to get the workers in that we need, and they just turn a blind eye and then they talk tough about it. Okay? What we really need to do is say, how many workers do we need to keep our economy running? And you pick a number X, you figure out what that number is, X, and then you say, immigration, we need X number of visas. And we provide a legal path to bring in the workers that we need. And when they're here, we treat them with dignity and respect as lawful members of our community. And the problem is, in the current system, hi guys, in the current system, it is a misdemeanor to work without papers. Okay. It is a federal felony to intentionally hire people that do not have papers. And when they're marching people out of a chicken plant, it's never the HR and the management that committed a federal felony. It's always the people that are committing the misdemeanors. Okay. I'll take one step further. If there was a decision made that we need to expel people that are here without documentation, the way you do that is you increase enforcement, which means you would have to give more money to ICE, but you also increase the number of judges and lawyers and advocates so that they can get a fair and speedy review to decide whether they belong in the United States or they should be expelled. It is just gross incompetence to corral people and hold them for long periods of time and not build up the systems needed for them to get adjudicated to decide whether they should be reintroduced into our community or not. And to take people that are productively contributing to this society, and many of them are paying into federal taxes and Social Security, and to take them out of the workforce and then pay for us to warehouse them with no good system of being able to get them adjudicated and either back into a productive member of society or out of this country is just incompetent. It is political theater to do it this way. If they wanted to really address the problem, they would have put probably half as much money into ICE, and they would have put more money into the judicial system so that they can clear them quickly. And they would have gotten more people that don't belong here deported quicker instead of us paying taxes to warehouse them. Pardon?
Follow the money.
Well, yeah. So it's just concentrated silliness, in my opinion, the way we've implemented it, if their goal was to maximize deportations. They're not doing that correctly, and they're not acting in our best interest, either one.
And they're treating the people in just unconscionable manner. I mean,
We'll get you in the next round. Go ahead.
I mean.
Oh, go ahead.
It's just awful. Well, it's sending them to countries that they don't even, have never entered, and, it's just terrible what's going on.
I was talking to a lady who should go nameless, and she told me that her son-in-law was a third country deportee, right? So he came from one country and he was deported to another country that he had never been in, right? And she contacted her two senators and congressmen, our congressman. She got one letter back that expressed some degree of compassion, and I think I know which person that was. Okay, and then she got two letters back bragging about how much they are deporting people. Okay.
You're un-American if you don't believe in what they're doing.
Yeah. And I believe that we need legal immigration to the limit of our needs, but it needs to be done in keeping with our basic values. And one of the things that I think one of the tests for humanity is if you look at, I saw an ICE agent grab a woman and slam her to the ground. And I thought, okay, if I were that woman and my husband was being taken away, would I have tried to rush to that spouse? And would I have done what she did? And the answer is probably yes. And then the question is, if I had been that ICE agent, would I have felt it necessary to use that level of force? And the answer is no. Okay. The policy as they're implementing it, the only way they can be successful is with ever increasing brutality. Okay. And they're not solving the problem. They're just trying to make themselves feel better about it. So sorry for the long thing. I feel strongly about it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir, Brad. Last year, the president of Congress passed what I call the big ugly bill.
Yeah.
Is there anything the new Congress, and hopefully, oh God, if you win, that could be done about that, like the Medicaid cut, Medicare cut, that kind of thing, or that's just too far gone?
So we need to repeal a whole lot of the stuff that's in there, right? And Trump said directly, he said, we can't afford Medicare, Medicaid, we can't afford these things, right? We have to spend our money on the military, okay? And
In ballrooms.
ballrooms. But, you know, so I worked for the military, okay? And I'm intensely proud of my contribution to help keeping our sailors safe. I'm not anti-military. But we've got to take care of each other as well. There's more than just the military. And you know, the idea that they're going to increase the military by $500 billion next year, that's a 50% increase, is just insane. So we have to repeal that. And there's a lot of Democrats, they're like, you know, we got to stop this, we got to repeal the big bad bill and blah, blah, blah. And that's all true. Don't disagree. But we'll go back to the board because it makes me feel better, right? If we do that, that only takes us back to 2024. And 2024 wasn't that spiffy. There were people that, you know, were having trouble getting into their first home. There were people going bankrupt because of healthcare costs. People were dying 4 to 7 years earlier because we've got a healthcare system that doesn't meet our needs. I mean, we had a lot of problems. And if you look at what's happening, pretty much anything you want to chart. If going down is bad, we have been on a downward trend for a long period of time. And Project 2024 is just a sharper dip in an already downward trend. Okay? Whether that is, you know, it doesn't matter what you want to put on here, whether it's probability that you're doing better than your parents, or, you know, disposable income, or, you know, whatever it is, we've been on a long-term trend, and I'm a Democrat. These long-term trends are not just Democrat and Republican. Democrats and Republicans, step back, nobody throw a rock at me. Democrats and Republicans have both contributed to some of these long-term trends. And we have to start making policies that work for us. And the thing that I've been talking a lot about is, you know, there are people who really want to talk about the 1%. They want to talk about, you know, what we need to do about the 1%. I think we need to start by talking about what we need to do for the 99%. What is a just society? What is a fair society? What rules do we need to have in place so that us and our children have a fair shot at a decent life? And then what are the policies we need to put in place? How much is that going to cost? And how are we going to fund it? Okay. And this may be a radical thing to say, but if I could do that and no one would have to get taxed, I'd be okay with that. Okay. If we could do all of that and reverse these trends and not increase taxes on the 1%, I'd be okay with that. For me, it's not about punishing the 1%. It's making sure that we have economic policies and tax policies that are fair, that allow the maximum number of people to have a fair shot at a decent life. And that's a subtle difference, and I'm belaboring it too much, and I apologize. Yes, ma'am.
We want to say this is not Biden's fault. We all did it. But we don't have any morals in the White House right now. And the only way we can do anything about it immediately, you can't just impeach Trump. You have to get the Democrats in Congress and the State House so they can impeach him that way. Because that would be then put him in a lame duck. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't vote against it. Get all the ones out there want to say, yeah, I'm for Trump. Whatever he says is right. And we're just losing men over there because that's the price of war. That wasn't our war.
We bear responsibility for the things that are done in our name. Okay. And we need to stand up and make sure. Thank you, ma'am. we need to stand up and make sure that our voice is heard and make sure that our government is reflecting our morals and our values and our priorities. And right now it's not. And you're right that I do not respect what our president does and how he treats people and how he conducts business. And in the long term and in the short term, it is going to undercut and undermine our long-term credibility and our stability and our safety. Yeah. Yeah. I think yes, sir. I'm trying to make sure everybody gets their first question out before I get a second.
I'm sorry if this may have been asked, I came in late.
Yeah.
Has anyone asked anything about data centers?
They've not. So I have advocated, or I am advocating for a moratorium on data centers. Okay, and this is why. It is clear that Trump put out actually Indiana a couple of years ago put out policies and I think a law that would help to accelerate data centers in Indiana, right? And one of the things that they did was that they gave them tax abatements for up to 20 years, and depending on how much, it can be as long as 30 years, I think, and other inducements to come to Indiana, right? And not a lot happened. I mean, there was a little bit, but this Wild West show started when Trump put out an executive order saying, hey, we need to do this. And now they're flooding in and they're working as fast as they can, and communities aren't ready. Okay, they have not reviewed their policies. They're not sure what the implications are. They don't have the tools that they need in order to make an educated decision in their community. And the state government, and now because the federal government has been undermined from the EPA and other areas, they don't have the regulatory authority to come in and audit to make sure that there's proper follow through. Okay, so I'm not saying that I don't want data centers anywhere, everywhere. I'm saying that, as with everything, these are community decisions. And if a community says, I want a data center, God love them, that's great. Just, don't pollute the water that's going to be, if you're upstream from me. And if they don't want a data center, that's fine too. It's their decision. And what has happened historically is when communities have the ability to push back, then some of the downsides that from whether it's a slaughter plant or whatever it is, they can push back and they can get some of those things ameliorated so that things are better. We don't have that right now. Okay. And what really scares me, frankly, isn't the data centers, but they're using the exact same model they're using for data centers for small modular nuclear reactors, and it's coming to a town near you. They're going to use us as ground zero for testing out small modular reactors. That, you're looking at me strange. Go ahead.
So actually, that does. So I'm not against data centers entirely.
Nor am I. I'm not in favor of them either. Yeah.
So like one of the things that I would like is there be closed loop.
Right. And that is.
So in that sense, it seems like small modular nuclear centers actually work because the Navy, they've been working for decades without problems.
Actually, they have had problems. They just don't talk about them. Okay. No, that's true. Okay. One of the fun things about Jimmy Carter was when 3 Mile Island happened, he was a nuclear engineer. So we had like the right guy in office to make sure that we were making good decisions. But if you go further back in his career, he had some experience when things weren't working, right? And the other problem is, how many people remember Windows 95? Okay, so Windows 95 sometimes worked good and sometimes crashed, right? Bill Gates has invested heavily in small modular reactor, invested in small modular reactors, and his philosophy and the philosophy in industry has always been run fast, break things, and we'll make them work. And my issue with small modular reactors is that there has to be government oversight to ensure that there is safety, and there has to be oversight to ensure that they're being implemented properly. And I have zero trust in the regulatory oversight under these circumstances. Okay, so I'm not saying no to that either. I'm saying that I have to have confidence that the government is going to make good decisions to ensure our safety and is going to provide monitoring. And I have no confidence in that at all. Okay, they have cut, I think by 20 or 30%, the organization that is supposed to be reviewing nuclear reactors. I have zero trust. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'd love to hear your opinion on Citizens United, corporate PAC money in politics.
So I think it's been a significant problem, and money has been a corruption in government forever, and this just accelerated. It's another one of those things that if we want to relabel this, here is Citizens United, right? We had been on a downward trend, but it made a significant decrease, and it's a real problem. And I have heard some things that can be done at the state level. I am not convinced, based on the fact that it's a Supreme Court decision, that Congress can undo it without a constitutional amendment. So I'm not in favor. I'm not in favor of what they did. I'm just not exactly sure what the right answer is to fix it.
Thank you.
Sure. Anybody got a first round question? Anybody had a question not answered yet? Hi. Not to put you on the spot. Go ahead.
This is my first time.
You're welcome. Uh-huh.
What is what is the biggest thing they think sets you apart from your opposition?
I am an electrical engineer that spent my life solving problems. My opposition has a master's degree in politics. Okay, and we need a little less politics and a little more problem solving, I think, in this world. I am not a career politician. I didn't want to run for office. This is something that I am doing because I think it is a matter of service, and I think that we are in a situation that I need to step up. Okay, but this is not something I covet, and I think that is the primary difference. Yes, ma'am.
What about term limits?
I'm going to argue both sides. Okay, on the one side, there's a home field advantage to being in office, an enormous home field advantage. Okay, and that is in the long run bad. They did a study and they said, and it was a nationwide study, and they said, what do you think of Congress? And they said, what do you think of your congressman? And they said, I like my congressman. They said, what do you think of all the others? And said, all the others suck. Okay, so there's an assumption that mine is good and everybody else's is bad, right? And that's part of that home field advantage. And we got to be able to break that home field advantage. And I think we can break that home field advantage by saying you can run for, pick a number, 2 or 3 consecutive terms, and then you have to sit out for 1 term. You have to lose home field advantage. And if you did a really good job and people still like you, without home field advantage, you could get reelected into that position. And that would allow people that are doing a good job to get seniority and begin and know how to move the levers of power and build the relationships without them being locked in indefinitely. You think of some of these people that are ossified and The Walking Dead. If they had to sit out one, they'd never be back. Yeah, I wasn't going to invoke his name for fear he'd appear. Yes, ma'am.
They sit out a term. Trump did that.
Yeah.
He set all nuts together. So then when he got back in, he could point them here and there and there, so they're running the government, like he falls asleep and builds toys or all,
That's true.
you know, it's like Mitch McConnell's been dead since what, January? Well, we haven't heard from him. I'm originally from Kentucky. I've only been over here 4 years.
Okay.
That's why I'm here now, because I don't get any information on what's going on in the politics here in Indiana. If I'm gonna vote, I gotta know who the thickens I'm voting.
I'm Brad Meyer. I'm running for Congress. Yeah.
And if you want more, I'm Virginia Peck. I'm Brad's, I was late getting here. I'm Brad's lead person here in Clark County. And I'm also the vice chair of the Democratic Party here in Clark County. So I would encourage all of you who have an interest in this election in November to join me and get engaged. It was very interesting the other night at the budget hearings that I'm sure in past years, nobody ever went to. But that room was full of people, and as a result, the whole decision-making process was changed. So people being in the room as you started in terms of having these town halls, I think this is a great way to interact with people, probably better than knocking on a door. And you need to be engaged.
Well, it's like, I found out about it through Facebook. And I responded, and I says, when and where? Of course, the Uber didn't get me here on the. I got like the Clarksville Library, standing down here, and it's like, okay, so a nice gentleman brought me over here. But it's just, and like where I live in a senior retirement facility. So I don't have the ability just to go out and do whatever, when I want. It costs me money, I have to get an Uber.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. And because of the, what we have to depend on is not reliable.
Yeah.
And that's another shame, but we don't get any information. I'm at, so you're gonna vote for, when's that? They're not dead, but they're sitting there waiting to die, but they're not been engaged in anything other than bingo or bunko.
Right.
And I'm
Gotcha.
not that type of person. I've got to be engaged, I always have been.
There you go. Did you have a question?
I do.
Yes, sir.
My name's Bruce Carver and I'm an independent.
Mhm.
I was curious, I'm seeing that, you brought that display that you've had 20 town halls compared. And I really value that. And I was just curious, if you do get elected, what means would you take in order to communicate with the constituents ongoing?
So we need to have more town halls. Okay. The fact is that, right now, there's only one office for our congresswoman, and it's in Washington County. And we really need to have not just one fixed office, but I'm really thinking about a mobile office that we can go from county to county to county, right? So there should be a schedule that if you want to meet with me or staff, that you'll know in advance, well, the mobile office is going to be in my county, so you don't have to drive, 2 hours to get to talk to one of my staff members or me. And we also need to have virtual town halls. I plan on spending a lot of time in Washington doing my job, right? And that means that I'm going to be separated, but that doesn't mean that I should be unavailable. So it's really important that we have this. And when I win, I have to represent the entire district, not just the people that voted for me. So people need to have a way of providing feedback, and I need to be able to communicate transparently with them what we're doing, right? Instead of having just a puff piece about, look how good I am. I mean, I want to do good, but I need to be able to communicate what's really going on so that you're informed.
I've been on now 40 years, and I've been begging for information, and people that run my facility, that's not a priority. My voting is not a priority, because when I went to vote in the primary, I had to get an Uber because they didn't set up aside a day to take people to the primary.
Ben, can you write that down? That's an interesting point. Okay.
Well, and if you'll get with me about where you live and we'll make sure you have a ride. You shouldn't have to pay an Uber. And we also have a traveling board that can go into the nursing homes for those that can't travel. And they can vote in their facility where they live.
And it wouldn't be counted as an absentee.
No,
That's
the
the
traveling
problem.
board goes, I've done it, and so talk to me when this is over.
Okay.
Good. I'll get you in a second, George. Any other questions? We're running low on time here. I'm trying to be respectful of your time. So last call for questions. Go ahead. You've got something on your mind?
Yeah, a little bit. I had a few questions, but I'll stick with one that I think is
Okay.
pretty important. It's a pretty new thing that I feel like a lot of people are talking about it now, but it hasn't really been highlighted as much. It's very new. Kind of just happened overnight, and I have no idea what to think about it. Well, I do have an idea what to think about it. I'm going on. Sorry, flock cameras.
Mhm.
Kind of come up overnight, and I don't know, I'm not one for extreme government surveillance, kind of like how they've been doing. I've seen a lot of arrests that have kind of been false because whatever AI using to be powered flock, it's just misreading license plates, and there's federal agents just knocking on people's doors and just at gunpoint, just arresting them. It's terrible. And I don't know, flock cameras is very new. I didn't know if you had a particular stance on that, or just how that even happens.
So I think that they're evil and pernicious and they shouldn't be allowed. Okay.
I'm glad we agree on that. Yeah.
Right. And even the way they come in
Yeah.
is they say, we have this very limited use and constrained use, and people go, yeah, all right, I can accept that. And then it gets extended, and then it gets extended. And then eventually you're like, we're way over here. I never would have voted for that. Right. And every time somebody brings up flock camera, I think about some years ago, I was driving with my wife and I got pulled over by a cop. I was going approximately the speed limit. I mean, I was not really speeding in a serious way, didn't have any violations. And he just pulled me over because he was bored. It was clear that he didn't have anything to do, and he didn't give me a ticket. He didn't even give me a warning, but he pulled me over. Right. And it pissed me off. You know, I have a right to be left alone, and I have a right to privacy. And even in public, I have a right to not be monitored. Okay. And these are just basic human and American rights to be left the heck alone if you're not doing anything wrong. So I got a problem with them. One more question, we're going to have to call it a day. We'll go.
Well, it's not, I'm just curious what your favorite Bill of Rights amendment is.
Good question.
You know, I'm pretty partial to the first 10, frankly. There's, you know, one of them that and I'll throw a curve in my answer. I'm pretty cool with the Second Amendment. You know, one of the things that people, you know, they claim as a Democrat that I want to take their guns, right? The fact is, I have my own guns. I don't need their guns, right? I think we need responsible gun ownership, but I think the right of free speech and the right of assembly is probably the one that comes to mind most, because all of the others flow from our right to speak out and assemble so that we can protect the rest of them. I quit my job. I told my wife when Trump took office, I said, because of the Hatch Act, I couldn't engage in political discourse. And I said, I've got a little over a year before I can take early retirement. And I just got to keep my head down and my mouth shut. And I came back a couple months later and said, I'm quitting my job and running for office. And she's like, what happened? And I said, they fired the board of the Kennedy Center. Okay. And it seemed, with everything else that's happened, it seems like a small thing. But when people in power start specifying what is acceptable and unacceptable speech, we're in real trouble. Okay, I'm not going to say that I have a favorite, but what I will say is the right to freedom of expression was the trigger that caused me to quit my job and run for office. So, okay. All right, guys and gals, thank you for being here. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate all of your time, and I thank you very much.